Welcome back to Grade 10 Mathematical Literacy. Today we're looking at analyzing and interpreting graphs as well as linear relationships with no direct proportion. This can be found in your textbook on page 55. Well, if we look at graph A, that is the one-rate cell phone tariff system. It's represented by the red line. Graph B is a different tariff system, and that's represented by the blue line. When we analyze graphs, the first thing we look at is the type. Is it continuous or is it discrete? Now remember what we said before. If I could find half of what was on this axis, so could I get charged for half a minute of call time? Yes, I could, so therefore the data is continuous. That graph represents continuous data. The next thing we look at is the shape. There is a constant relationship. Graph A is a straight line which represents a constant relationship because the cost of a call is going up at a constant rate. The blue line also goes up at a constant rate. If we have a look at the blue line, this contract starts at 0. So this will tell us that for no calls there is no charge, so we know that this is a prepaid system. If we look at the blue line, it starts just under 100 Rand. So we know that is a contract because if we don't make any calls, we still have to pay the 100 Rand. The next thing we look at is the direction. Well, these graphs are going in a positive direction. As the calls increase, so the cost increases. Steepness, well, the red graph is steeper than the blue graph, but because the blue graph starts off at a number greater than 0, it is more expensive until the break-even point, which is here, and then the blue line is below the red line, so then the blue, which is a different tariff system, becomes cheaper. The other thing we have to look at is the intercepts with the axis, which we've just briefly explained. This intercepts the axis at 0 and 0, no calls, no cost. At 0, this is just under 100, and that indicates that you are paying something before you even make a call. Activity 4, what's happening here, a person takes out a bank loan and payment must be made to the bank every month until the entire loan plus interest has been paid to the bank. The graph shows the amount still owing on the loan at the end of every month. So that will be 20 months, 40 months, 60 months, 120 months, 12 months in a year, so that is going to be 10 years. Right, is this continuous or discrete? Well, our instructions or the scenario stated that it is getting paid at the end of every month. So if I had half a month, there's no payment, so that is why this graph is discrete. We've got dots or diamonds, but they are not joined by a solid line. So that graph is discrete. Now we look at the curve or the shape of the graph. It is a curved line. Direction, well, the graph is slanting downwards. It's traveling in a downward direction. The steepness, in the beginning, there's a gentle slope, and as the loan is getting paid off, the graph becomes steeper and steeper and steeper. Look at the difference between the last 20 months and look at the difference in slope between the first 20 months. You can see that it is less steep. Okay, we just need to Now we look at the intercepts with the axes. The horizontal axis, the graph intercepts at 240, so this will tell us that after 240 months the loan is paid off. The intercept with the vertical axis is at 500 Rand, so that tells us 500 Rand had to be paid off at the beginning of the loan. Now we're going to move to describing relationships using equations. The cost of a call on one rate cell phone tariff is R1.50 per minute. Construct an equation to describe the relationship. Well, the first thing you have to decide, what is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable? So we've got the cost and we've got the time. Well, the cost depends on the time, so our independent variable is going to be the length of the call. You can choose how long you want to talk for. So the dependent variable will be cost in rands. Well, if it's R1.50, so if I make one call, okay, let's have a look on the calculator. One call multiplied by R1.50. Sorry, mistake there. R1.50. My cost is going to be R1.50. If I make two calls, it will be 2 times R1.50, which is R3. 3 calls, 3 times R1.50 is R4.50. 4 calls will cost R6. 5 calls will cost R7. 6 calls will cost R9. Right, now when we set up an equation, we have to ask what will any number of calls cost. So you ask yourself, what did I do to 6 to get R9? Well, I multiplied by R1.50. 5, I multiplied by R1.50. So each time I take the length of the call, I've got to multiply the minutes by R1.50. So we're going to take T multiplied by R1.50, so that will be the cost of your call, but a better way of writing it would be R1.50 times the number of calls, and if we write it algebraically, it's going to be R1.50 times T. Linear relationships with no direct proportion. Well, the first thing we're going to do is construct a table of values. And Mkhosi finds the following information relating to electricity tariffs on the flat rate system in Pietermaritzburg. This is the service that they provide. So it tells us that there's a single phase electricity at 40 amps. The basic charge per month is 210 Rand. And here the basic charge or the base fee, so you have to pay this whether or not electricity is used. And on top of that, you're going to be charged per kilowatt hour of electricity at 41.9 cents. Yes, 41 cents, and part, it's almost 42 cents, but it's 41.9 cents. So again, we've got to decide the dependent variable. Well, the dependent variable, what depends? Does the electricity depend on the charge, or does the charge depend on the electricity? Well, we use electricity and we are charged accordingly. So our independent variable are units of electricity, and those are the kilowatt hours. Then the dependent variable is going to be the monthly cost in rands. So if we use no units of electricity, well, if we look at our table, basic charge per month is 210 Rand. So if I use no electricity for the month, I have to pay 210 Rand. This is what will happen when you go on holiday. Well, not quite, because your refrigerator will still run. If I use 10 kilowatt hours of electricity, I have to pay the basic charge plus 10 times the fee. So the basic charge is 210 Rand plus 10 multiplied by, now why can't I put 41,9? Well, these are cents. These are cents. And your charge is in Rand. So it's a good idea to go and change 41,9 cents to Rands. You would divide by 100 because there are 100 cents in a Rand. So it's 0,419. And yes, we do work with money to 3, 4, and even more decimal places later on. So our basic charge, so we're going to say 10 multiplied by 0.419, and the answer would be 214 Rand and 19 cents. Now I'm not going to go up in ones because we use quite a bit of electricity a month, into the 100 kilowatt hours. Right, so I'm not going to cancel this. All I'm going to do is go, I'm now deleting that because I want to use 20 kilowatt hours, and I've got 218.38. Then I go to 30 kilowatt hours, and I would go 210 plus 30 multiplied by 4, 0,419, and that would be 222 Rand 57. I do not need to write the Rand sign in front because I have got the Rand sign here. So that means all of these are Rand values. These little dots, remember from previous lessons, means skip a few. So we're going 10, 20, 30, skip a few. Now we have a look at 100. So it would be 210 Rand plus 100 times 0,419, and our total is 251 Rand 90. I'm going to skip another few, 500, and the total will be 419 Rand 50. Most of us are using in the region of 500 Rand a month. Once we've constructed our table of values, we can now draw a graph. Remember, heading, very important. Every graph must have a heading, and you need to include what is going on in the horizontal axis as well as the vertical axis. So these are electricity tariffs, units of electricity used for the flat rate system, tariffs, monthly cost. Right, from our table we saw that if we use no electricity, we use 210 Rand. So I go and fill in my first point on my graph. For 10 kilowatt hours of electricity was 214 Rand and 19 cents. So there's 215, 214 would be just below. 20 was 218, approximately there. 30 was 222, there's 222, approximately there. And 100 units, which is up here, is 251. And if you've plotted accurately and you draw your line, all those dots should be on the same line. How do I know whether to draw a straight line or to just join the dots as I plotted them? Well, it is a straight line because every unit of electricity goes up by 41.9 cents. So this graph is increasing by 41.9 cents per unit of electricity. This is not direct proportion because it doesn't start at 0. But the graph does go up at a constant rate of 41.9 cents per unit. There's our graph, and remember you could be asked to find out how much 90 units cost. So we would draw a straight line there and across. So it would probably be 247 Rand or in that region. You could also be asked, if you spend 235 Rand on electricity, how many units did you use? And you can see here I'm lifting my pen up at 60, so that is where you would put your letter, and it would be 60 kilowatt hours of electricity. How would we write this equation? Well, this is the important thing that is different this time. So if I have naught, it means I have a base fee. To write the equation, we're going to say, so my cost will equal 210 Rand, and that is what we did on the calculator. Added to the 210 Rand was the units of electricity, so units used, multiplied by Rand value, because this is also a Rand value, 0.419. And that would be the equation. Whenever you have an equation like this, if there is a number on its own, you know that the graph is going to start up the horizontal axis and not at 0. I need to point something out to you. This is not a good idea to start at 200 here, but I chose to do it. Otherwise the graph would have been very, very small, and these points would have been plotted right next to each other in the first section of the graph. So always start your graphs from 0 and plan your points accordingly. I'd like you to do activity 5 on page 59 as well as exercise 2. So page 59, activity 5, and exercise 2. That's all for today. Thank you.